I'm not really a PowerPoint guy, so I figured I'd stand here and speak to you instead. I don't want anyone in this room to be a successful entrepreneur. I actually do not like that word combination. To me, that doesn't send the right message. What I want to talk about today is what can you do to become a significant entrepreneur. And by significant, I'm not talking about money and the size of your wallet and what you send on that piece of paper to the government, but where you can make your biggest impact. And so I've put together a little 20-minute presentation in my mind, or a speech, that I titled 3E plus C. And the first E has to do with enjoy the process. And this holds as much true for entrepreneurship as it does for somebody who lives their life. Now, for most of you and most of us as business people, you are a business person and you are a human being at the same time. That, by all indication, will stay that way for a while. There is obviously some amount of progress that machines are making. But the fact is that while I'm being a businessman, while I'm being an entrepreneur, while I'm doing a lot of things, I'm also a human being. And there are a lot of things that happen in life that at many times don't seem fair. When you're building a company, I understand what Robin was talking about, or what Kevin was talking about, or Balaj. There are times when you think you're going to go bankrupt, but there are also spaces between there where things may not be going fantastically well, but they're not going so bad. And I think in retrospect, I had the experience of spending 10 years in a startup, a Hungarian startup, that I was convinced was going to go bankrupt. But we had so much enthusiasm and inspiration, and we believed so hard that our business plan would work, that we forced it through our enthusiasm and our hard work for it to come true. But there were times when we really thought we were going to go bankrupt. But in the past, when I look back, I say, what a wonderful experience to have gone through that pain. Because I think, well, I had a discussion with my sister, she's visiting from Denver this morning, and one of the problems that we do is we try to coddle people, and we want to prevent that they have any kind of negative experience in their life. And we set them up to fail, and I think quite honestly in so many countries, the US is still doing a good job, but not a great job, because we coddle people. The fact is you can choose your behavior and it has a consequence. And we need to let people suffer that consequence because they learn from that. And there's a great book, I haven't read it, if anybody has, show me your hand. The title of the book is The Gift of Pain. Some of the most incredible things have come from people who have experienced the most horrific things in their life, whether it's the death of a child or whether it's the death of a spouse or bankruptcy, and yet they're able to bounce back. A friend of mine from Dallas, Texas would always say his dad told him, it's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you get up. It's all about the bounce. I used to do a seminar with a now TV celebrity in the United States in Dallas, and he would talk about this process and the fact somebody would complain to him and say, you know, raising kids is hard. And he looked at her, and with the greatest amount of comfort, because he was not the kind of guy that you could easily ruffle his feathers, he looked at her and he said, excuse me, ma'am, just who the hell told you raising children was easy? There are a lot of valuable things in life that the path leading to that, whether it's raising a family, I'm not surprised Robin is able to do what she is. I mean, there's a mom, not a single mom, but a mom raising 3 kids. I have 3 kids. That's a lot of balls in the air. And yet she's thinking, what could I do to make my life easier? And then she takes a step forward. She does what Nike says, just do it. And she went forward and she went through the process. It was not easy. I can't imagine a woman, here she is. Can you imagine her locked in a bedroom, crying for 2 hours, and somebody tapping on the door and say, could you please come out and join us? And yet she's here to tell us about a remarkable story. I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to be a successful human being, if you want to be a significant entrepreneur, you're going to have to fall in love. You're going to have to enjoy the process. There will be good, there will be bad. All of it comes together to create magic. Number 2, you have got to embrace people. When we started building in 1996, 1997 Euronet, one of the things that we put a lot of effort and emphasis on was that when you start out with a startup organization, it wasn't really touched upon today, but when these groups start to grow, frustration sets in. Frustration because you have people at different skill levels and different maturity levels who are comfortable when the company's only 10 people and they can have coffee with the CEO, but when there are 40 people and now I have to actually go to an Outlook page and schedule 15 minutes to have coffee, that creates frustration. And one of the things that I'm surprised at is how we do not focus on people. Many companies do, and not to say that there are not good examples of this, but I read what I found to be an unbelievable example just the other day. Yesterday, I was sent an email, and in San Francisco, not San Francisco, in Los Angeles, so lots of you were in San Francisco. You were in LA too, right? They had just given students an iPad. And it was the worst school district in Los Angeles. And they looked one semester after it wasn't an experiment, I mean it was a going forward project, and they looked at the progress made by some of the kids. And one of the kids made the greatest amount of progress and they were stunned. And they looked back and they said he has a horrific family background, he's got learning disabilities. How in the world did this kid go from where he was to making up 7 years of development in one semester? And so this was a 10-year-old kid. And so they invited the kid in and they said, what happened? You have all these negative things going for you, what happened? And he said, all the kids call me retarded. My iPad calls me Raymond. And just by a machine speaking to this kid and calling him by his first name and encouraging him, he made unbelievable progress. Jack Welch, the ex-CEO of General Electric, said the only item on the balance sheet of the corporation that grows in value when you treat it well is the employee. And how we don't take the opportunity when it's a startup, we're under frustration, things aren't going well, and we tend to dismiss the importance of, if I'm the CEO, I am the pilot. I don't know how many of you have ever been on a really, really turbulent flight. Has anybody been on one where, Ursula, you're shaking your head? So you've been there, right? Happened here, above the BGF building? No. Okay, so above Hungary. So how would you feel if you're in this unbelievable turbulent situation and the pilot comes on with a shaking voice? What does that do for your level of confidence? I'll tell you what it does for me. Much like what that story was where the pilot ordered a cup of coffee. And the stewardess takes the coffee into the cockpit and hands him the coffee, and they're flying smooth, and then all of a sudden the plane takes a sudden turn to the right and heads down. The pilot recovers, pulls the plane back into a level flying mode. He turns on the microphone, he says, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that. What happened is I was served a cup of hot coffee and it poured into my lap. And jokingly he said, you should see what my pants look like in the front. And one passenger got up and said, you should look at my pants in the back. That is how I would feel. So what I look to for my pilot or for my CEO is a level of confidence. And I need to instill it, I need to share it, and I need to embrace the people. Because if I don't do that, they will inevitably start to lose confidence. And they will start to pull back, because at the end of the game, this is an emotional game, right? So anybody who thinks you can get through life and do it unemotionally, it ain't gonna happen. And there are guys that are a whole lot smarter and better at this than I am, but they teach emotional mastery so you can get to the point where you can make the right decision at the right time. But you have got to be in charge, because there are people looking for you, and you talked about this, Kevin, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 people are now buying into a lower salary and into a future position in a company, but right now the only thing they can base that on is you and their relationship with you. So the first thing is you got to enjoy the process, and that holds true for everything. What a shame to build a wonderful company and not enjoy life. You can do both at the same time. The next one is you got to embrace the people, as I mentioned. The third one, and this I very strongly believe about, you need to engage with a huge problem. Now maybe you can do that inside your company, maybe outside your company, but there are so many, as Singularity University people like to call it, grand challenges. And if you can align your life with something that's bigger than your own life, you will be able to tap into what is called the meaning of life. If you have a reason to get up every morning and that reason is bigger than just making a paycheck, you're driven by a mission. You guys talked about being driven by a mission. Because when you hit those down periods, you're going to need something, a well to draw from. A source of energy, a source of your own inspiration. And people are looking to you to be able to pass it on. And one thing I strongly believe in, that a good CEO, a good entrepreneur will find, even though Balai says it's difficult. And I like what Robin said, that you become so consumed. This is that flow concept about being in that feeling. But the fact is, if you're aligned with something and you feel like you're making progress, let me tell you what, you don't need an alarm clock in the morning. And these are life skills that I think for those of us who had an opportunity to be born into a country where this is taught, but it's not necessarily taught there was never a class in my high school where they taught you life skills. It's just, we had heroes, we had people to look up to, and we had people who mentored us. And so if I go back to the embrace people, you know, once you get started, once you start doing things, because just to take that first step and cross the line and get started, to buy for 300 euros that airplane ticket and put your butt on the airplane headed to Luton, most people cannot do that. But I tell you what, a lot of people are real close, and all they need is a word of encouragement, and that word of encouragement doesn't cost anything. There's a wonderful book titled Life Strategies. And in that, the author, Dr. McGraw, talks about you can draw a line in anybody's life and pretty much limit or boil it down to 10, don't worry about the numbers, 10 decisions, 7 events, and 5 key people in your life that have shaped you to where you are today. And I think most of us can easily think back to someone, and maybe it was an accidental meeting that had such an unbelievable impact on us that it changed the way we felt, changed the way we thought, and gave us that encouragement. I kind of sense that in Robin's story when she's talking about her meeting, when she shares her business plan. What happens to this Zipcar story when he looks at her plan and says, it sucks? Instead, it cost him nothing. Grow your dream bigger. And now she is a mother of 3, beyond an exit to Avis, magic happens. So I really believe that these 3 enjoy the experience, embrace the people. There are so many people. All they need is a little bit of encouragement. And we get this. We had mentors, many of us in the I know I certainly did. And I get around people that are simply excited to be alive. And when you do these things and you have a reason other than a business, because if your only reason for living is to make sure the business fails or succeeds, then you're hosed when it fails. But you need to have something bigger and more overarching than the business. And that's what I mean by aligning yourself with something bigger than your life. And then the final one, the C. So that's the 3 E's, but the final one is CYA. And CYA, if you're from the US, what does it mean? Laszlo, can you? I don't remember. He doesn't want to remember it. Does anybody, what does it mean? No. Charles, I saw you were raising your hand. No, thank you very much, though. Fell in that trap. My own sister. CYA, anybody? CYA means choose your attitude. Choose your attitude. You know, if you want to see Brother Tsiryak's blood pressure go up, when he asks or offers you some kind of a situation, just tell him why it won't work. Don't tell him why it will or what we can do to change it. Just tell him why it won't work. And how many deals, how many things never get out of the starting blocks because it's an attitudinal problem. Years ago, and this certainly is not a timed or choreographed thing, but my sister lent me a book years ago. The title of the book, you probably don't even remember this, was called Learned Optimism. And I really believe that an attitudinal change, it's so incredibly simple that most of us aren't willing to do it because we're looking for a complex solution, partly to justify why we hadn't done it earlier. It's a decision. It's a decision. Maybe in the beginning it doesn't feel good. but it's a decision to start look for the opportunity. You know, Robin could have sat back and said, damn it, this world is unfair. I got 3 kids. My husband takes the only car we have, and I got to do shopping and all this stuff. Right? And we would have all gotten together and had coffee. Probably made her pay for it. And then agreed, yeah, gee, Robin, that life's not fair. And yet it's a small attitude, because that's at this point, right? That's the gun. Now, I don't shoot guns. Dottie, I'm looking at you because you have somebody in the family who does. But somebody, if you make a small mistake here, if you're off the sight here where the gun is in your hand, you're going to miss the target by a long shot. But the fact is, if you just make a small thing, make a challenge, 1 week. I'm going to start looking for the positive things. Because most things that we have today are because something was a pain in the butt. And somebody decided to do something about it. But it's an attitudinal thing. And that's what I think probably next to the optimism and next to the venture capital and all the heroes that you might grow up with in the U.S., it's an attitudinal thing. And people just get it. You know, when your attitude changes and you become positive, guess what you do with all the people in your life who are negative? You get rid of them. We draw things back. One of the worst things, one of the greatest things in the world is the family. One of the worst things in the world is the family. Right? Because of the bonds and the ties, and all of a sudden somebody's on the edge and they want to do something differently. And there's mom and there's dad and there's probably grandpa, and they're saying, hey, think twice, think 3 times. We've had 4 engineers. Your grandfather and great-grandfather was an engineer. And yet, that's not in their heart. But in the U.S., and what we're trying to do through AmCham, through what's going on in Pitch, is share that attitude. You know, it's like a candle that's burning. You've heard the cliche, if I light your candle off mine, I lose nothing from my flame. It's so easy to do. And I think if you adopt some of these things and make it part of your lifestyle, so it may be strange in the beginning, but you start doing it. You get around people who are positive. It changes your attitude. You know, it's like, remember there was a guy, American General Schwarzkopf. He's no longer alive. But when somebody from the military walks into the room, what do they normally look like? Right? Their chest is out. Their shoulders are back. Right? So when that person walks into the room, what do? What do? Stand up straight, right? Right? He's taught that. That became his way of life. But imagine the impact it has on you. You don't even know the person. And you pull your chest out. Imagine if you could do that to people with your attitude. Imagine if people knew you as, don't go negative stuff in there, Laszlo. He ain't going to tolerate it. You start doing that, I'll tell you what, in a year from now when we hold the 3rd annual Entrepreneur Summit, we'll be talking about people who are significant, and we'll be looking at the numbers. We'll be looking at the impact that they made on their lives, on the lives of others, whether it's through their business or whether it's just being there. You know, I think digital presence is really important, but as the digital presence grows, the bio presence needs to grow also, because nothing will substitute that word of encouragement. Let me throw one last thing, high tech. I was told the other day that Roomba, that vacuum cleaner, the robotic vacuum cleaner, 60% of the people in the US who buy a Roomba give it a name. So now it becomes a family member. 30% of those people take their Roomba on vacation with them. So it is possible to fall in love with the device, but wouldn't it be better if we fell in love with those that we work with or those around us? So I want to encourage all of you, enjoy the process. We're going to get through it. Embrace the people who help you get there, and engage yourself in something that's bigger in life. Choose your attitude, and you won't have to worry about becoming a significant entrepreneur. It's going to happen on its own. All it takes is one decision, and I ask you guys to make that as soon as possible. Laszlo?